Welcome back, or welcome to the Next Level Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris, and we're brought to you by Apex Performance, the only security and leadership training foundation focused on the security industry. And I'm super excited today to have a friend, longtime colleague, and just awesome human being, Bert Hart, with us here today. So Bert is the founder of We the Dreamer, and they focus on creativity and all types of awesome, content for security technology and security and the security space. But Bert, tell us a little bit about your background, kind of about yourself, and how you ended up. I think our listeners are always interested in the genesis story of how people end up in the security industry. It's usually not a straight line that gets us here, and typically there's virtuous interactions and opportunities that led us to where we are, and maybe more importantly caused us to stay in it. So love to hear about your background and how you ended up where you are.
Absolutely. First and foremost, John, I am excited to be on your show. I remember first meeting you and talking with you and seeing how you can talk and lay in on the subjects that you are well versed in. And I was like, man, that dude could be a voice. He could do his own podcast. So I'm so happy to see that that you're doing it. You made this thing you're on, and you're pushing it out into the industry, because I think a voice like you needs to be heard. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Bert. I go by Bert. I've been in the security industry since 2014. So quite some time. I came in as a creative, and I am still that. Just to give you a little bit more background about me and where I started, I like to take long walks on the beach. High school dropout here. I like to drop that in because a lot of people, oh, really? Wow. What's your story? But yeah, high school dropout. Ended up going to college for graphic design. Originally, I was going for art, but then I was told for one of my older brothers that I would be poor if I went in for drawing. So I decided to stick with computers, and it has served me well in the creative space. So man, I'm trying to bring it all up. So from there, from college, I've just always been in a multi-position deal where I was working with smaller organizations doing their creative. At the same time, I was running a wheatgrass business in Starksville, Mississippi, along with working at a juice company, all while being a webmaster at Mississippi State University. I was just I finally got the supposedly dream job that I wanted, because I was my expectations for working is getting a nicely paid job where I have my own office and everything. But because I'm a social person, when I finally got this huge office and, all the computer screens and stuff like that, I realized that I've kind of boxed myself in. So I started doing everything else outside of my working hours to really fulfill my creative pursuits and that's business and just really, health and creativeness all around. So from there, I ended up moving to Maryland. I think this is probably where I'm going to die. I love it here. And moved up here in 2014. Didn't have anything lined up. I just believed in myself. I knew what I did was good. You can look at it. Fantastic. So when I did that, I moved up here, and maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, I landed a job with Brevo. At the time, I came in with shortly after Hillary and Leo Dess was my boss then, and I worked with Steve Antill. I think Steve Antill still is the captain of that ship. And it was just kind of happenstance. It was just a company. I interviewed with them. I danced in my interview because I'm just yo, this is who I am. And if you don't like it, that's okay. I can find someone else, because I was just confident in what I can do and the stuff that I'm good with. I am not a wordsman per se. but I can make graphics all day long. So from there, I knew that I was in love with the industry only because there was very little, very little in that space happening, back in 2014 on the creative end of things. So they brought me in as their like sole designer. So I was doing a lot for them at the time, creating and like trying a lot of new things. And I remember working at Brevo, and I knew I was like, man, I love this place. I was probably 6 months in. I was like, hey, this is great. Best team, one of my best teams I've ever had. And, one day I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go work outside my hammock because I need to get my creative juices going. And I remember looking up at the window and seeing Steve Van Til like, who is that? What is Bert doing? and Leo did something. He said, hey, you just gotta let Bert be Bert. And I was like, you know what? Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks. Because sometimes as a creative, it's not always behind a desk. And sometimes we need to step out of a position to like, see something else, or just to be able to think and or hear when you're creating new things and turning over new designs for the things that people envision. Where I like to think of myself as like the, I don't know, like the strength behind creating someone's ideal, because a lot of times people have in their minds what they want, but they can't put it down on paper. And my job is to like take what they want and make it into like reality, in a digital sense, or sometimes in a physical space, since I do prints. So I worked there for a while, and over the course of the time while I was there, I started to ask myself like, hey, I'm doing a good bit for the company as a sole designer. As people who know, you have to wear multiple hats. So it was a lot of different things, not just graphic design. It was a lot of animations, photography, video stuff. And I was just like, and then Brevo got into cahoots with Eagle Eye. So then, we're kind of picked up a little bit more. And I was still asking myself like, hey, I'm working with this industry and just this industry. I need to be able to see, like, can I do this myself? And can I like work with multiple industries? That way I can have different ideals, for one particular idea, one particular industry, in terms of like, all right, well, you all do it this way, but this industry over here is doing it fantastic and it looks this way. So maybe we can like compare, but make it our own, because if they're doing it right, then there's things about what they're doing that we can do too, to move towards success. So after thinking about it for a long time and just like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it. I had literally had $0 saved up. Oh geez, it was a jump, because I just like, I got to do this for myself. It's either me or something else. So I left, and like the following next 2 months, I was like super broke. But I always kept the same thing in my mind. It's like, as long as you're moving forward, as long as you're doing something towards what you want, it'll work out. And those 2 months was hard. But we survived. My partner and I, we survived. It was, it was a tough time for us. But then after 2 months of like grinding and doing the free stuff and being on Craigslist looking for small jobs and Facebook things, I was just like, hey, if I'm not doing anything, just let me do it for you, because this is just what I love to do. A lot of times people have great ideas and great companies, but they don't have a budget to like create like great work to really make them rise at whatever they're doing in the industry and to be more legitimate. So then there were a lot of projects that I just kind of took on because I just wanted to like do my part. One, to continue to be creative, and two, to just like keep the wheels moving, even if it was like, I don't know, $25 logos. And dude, I know I'm getting burnt on this, but I got to keep moving. And then after this, landing job after job after job, where I had more work than I could handle, and just like learning how to navigate it in the sense of like, always being like that sole designer in these different roles that I've played a part in. It kind of gave me like the push and pull of dealing with like high stress levels. because for designers, our work do not stop at 5 o'clock. We are literally up a lot of nights, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning to crank out ideas that people drop in on our laps that day or the next day. It's like, hey, can you get this by Friday? That shouldn't be anything hard. And for us, it was just like, all right, let's go. And for me, it was like, all right, this is a challenge. I'm going to take this challenge on and I'm going to see how well I can do to produce good product. And then over time, you just kind of get the rhythm of like the pressure and being able to still spit out really good content and, not reinventing and wheel anywhere, but just really moving forward. And I like to tell people about that story because that was like my like wake up call for like just about everything that I want to do, but I'm always a little bit nervous about because I had an ideal in my head what I wanted to do. And I literally had an ideal in my head about how much money I want to make. I even printed out this like little picture. There's this little picture that I printed out, put it up on my desk. It said $78,000. And I was like, that's what I want to make. I don't know how I'm gonna make it. And to me, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'm a man from Mississippi. That was a lot of money
Yeah.
for me. I was like, if I could able to make that by myself, then I would be proud of it
Yeah.
because that's just what I want. This has always been for me like enough to survive, enough to just be happy. I never wanted any more than that. So after the 2 months, the third month rolled through, the fourth month rolled through, and I was like, oh man, oh snap, I just rolled over 6 figures. And I'm like, I'm living right now
Yeah.
because like being able to make that jump, being able to say, this is what I want to do. Like, and I want to be myself. I can't like be anything other than myself. And I just like went with it. And working for myself now after because working for yourself is just like an ocean waves. There are ups and there's downs. And oh my God, I always think about there's a meme. I really love memes. Good way of communicating visually.
Yeah.
But there's this meme of this dog in his burning house.
Yeah. I know
And
exactly what you're
everyone
talking
finds it
about.
hilarious. And I'm like, man, that's genius to be able to be comfortable in that position when everything's burning down because you can panic and you can be afraid and you can be scared, but it won't change anything about the circumstance. It just makes you feel worse. But that
So
dog and that meme, man, that dog and that meme say, you know what? It's okay.
it's gonna be fine. So, Bert, I know there's more. There's a next chapter to that story, but there's so much gold in what you just laid out that I want to dig into and pull some things out from it. One, let's start at the end and go back. It's funny how you can, it reminds me of those, you know, like ink blobs where you look at it and it's like, no, it's a gorilla wrestling with a bear. No, it's the Mona Lisa. No, right. So everybody's perspective is different. You look at a simple meme where most people look at that and say, this person is oblivious to the surroundings and see that as
Right.
like a negative attribute. You look at it and say, he doesn't care what's going on around him. He's still going to drink his tea and go about his business because he doesn't control the fire. He's got to work through the fire.
Right.
That's such an amazing thing to look at that same meme and see it in a different way. One of the things that I love. So one of my favorite like Bert stories is the hammock story, and to one, like kudos to like Brevo's probably one of the security companies that I admire the most. I think Steve Van Til, I don't know him, I haven't met him personally, but I know people who know him and
Oh
have
yeah.
worked for him and worked with him, and the guys have been doing cloud, like they always seem ahead of their time, and even embracing your like if you went back and looked at the content and things that they've been putting out, they always seem
Right.
ahead of the curve. They've been doing cloud access control for over 2 decades when people still think
Right.
it's like not something that you can do. It's like they've been doing it forever. So for them to say, one, we're going to take this chance on this guy again, we like, if there's a theme in many of my recent podcasts is I have these, what I'll call friends of Leo Des. There's a group of us who know him well, and and I think this is probably where he got it from, where he talked about talent over tenure, right? If he would have went
Right.
out and gotten find someone who's been doing marketing and visual creativity in the security industry for 10 years. He would have gotten the same thing that's been
Right.
done in the security for the last 10 years. So he goes and finds a young creative in yourself who's never done anything, who's going to bring fresh ideas in, and then lets you do you.
Right.
Because
Right.
that's how, I wrote down, get out from behind the desk and go get inspired.
Right.
Right. Kind of a reminder to anybody who's listening to this, like every now and again, doesn't matter what you do. If you're a security director, if you're a design products, it's whatever, get out from behind your desk, go somewhere and get inspired. So I think, that's such a great message. But another thing you talked about that I want to mine into a little bit is, you took a huge bet on yourself, and
Right.
you, at one point you said, if I can do this here, I can do it for anybody, and I can do it everywhere. And I'm going to go try this. And
Right.
is it safe to say that by doing that, you've built a mental model that you can go back to anytime thing gets hard and say, well, it'll never be harder than it was then. Like, no matter what happens,
Right.
no matter what happens to me, um, it'll never be harder than that. So, so if so tell me about, like, what does that do? Because I have this framework that I've been kind of toying around with recently, and I'm codifying it. It's belief, action, discipline, outcome. Believe in yourself,
Right.
take action, have the discipline to take that action over and over again. Then you get the virtuous outcome, and then you have success, and then you use that framework to take it to the next level. So tell me about that, how you reach back to that as proof that Bert can do awesome things.
Man, I don't know. I mean, it's the belief part that people have to start with, because a
Mm,
lot of times people don't like necessarily, I mean, honestly, believe in themselves. And they are not surrounded by a lot of people who allows them to believe in themselves. It's always like a lot of pressure that we put upon ourselves in the work world, and just even outside of the work world. We put a lot of pressures on ourselves and how we should be and where we need to be and how we feel that we need to be perfect. And I am far from perfect. I'm like dysgraphic, so I can't really write sentences without reading over it 1,000 times and still making mistakes. And I'm
that's what
just like,
Grammarly's for, Bert. That's why
right,
Grammarly
I
exists
know,
now.
exactly. It's like great for me because like the pressures that we put on ourselves, you know, you just gotta like honestly, you just gotta like start believing in yourself and starting there. And as long as you know what it is that, as long as you know what it is that you want to do and what you want to become, then that's the best place to start.
Mm.
Because when I think about, to your question, when I think about how hard it was those 2 months and how many times those thoughts of like how I made a bad decision tried to creep in, and like everything that was happening to me externally, and I had to keep continually defaulting to my belief on what I know and love and what I can do, and like being patient with time itself. And whenever I am in a situation on that down wave with business when I don't have months, because there are times where I don't have anything for a whole month, and I'm like, that's okay. Just keep moving forward, keep learning, keep going, and it'll work out. And it always does. And then the more that happens, the more it's just like no stress about any situation that's happening. And it goes beyond just a work situation. I'm always like telling people like, yo, I was there. I know exactly how you feel. This is what happened to me. Prime example. I had nothing. I wouldn't advise, like, if you can, if you want to, you can put yourself up a little bubble, just to kind of pad your fall a little bit. But if you want to jump, go for it. Because we're only on this dirt ball for a very short period of time. And when you start thinking about that, and you start thinking about you and what you want to achieve from this world, then you'll make that jump quite easy. So yeah.
You start to, um it's easy. Well, this is my experience. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Well, first of all, I want to, the first real life conversation that you and I had. So what not a lot of people know, is that so Leo Des, when he started Group 337, he had you, me, and Hillary Gallagher. We had a couple other, kind of subcontractors who worked for us, but us four were the core team, and we all worked together for almost a year. We had never met in real life. I hadn't met all of you. You guys knew each other, but I hadn't met you, and we hadn't been together as a team, until we all got a Airbnb in Detroit, to do strategic planning for a year that would be the craziest year ever, because we'd go on to be acquired and join Latch and have a different adventure than we anticipated. But you and I, our first conversation, I don't know if you remember this, but I wake up to go for, maybe I was coming back from a run. You were about to go out for a run. You were making coffee, and somehow our conversation ended up talking about like the energy of the universe. And I think we talked a little bit about whether time travel was like we got like within 15 minutes, we're talking about like just, things that I usually can't talk to people about because they think I'm crazy. And because it just like, and then I don't know if you remember, like a couple of months later, we were in New York and we were talking about whether we think it's like scientifically possible for ghosts to be real just because of the remnants of human energy, and that like it's not really ghosts in the sense of like they're haunting, it's just like the remnants of the energy that was left in your body, because we're all just energy. I mean, so anyway, like those are the conversations that Bert and I have, ladies and gentlemen. They're not your traditional conversations, but you said something really important. Go ahead.
I was just about to say, you do not want to look through my like ideal journal. I keep like a lot of journals for everything, and I have an ideal journal. And in my downtime, I'm always trying to explore something and learn something on my own. And one summer, I think that summer when we met, I was on this whole kick of learning everything about like how the universe is made, energy itself, and like man, and how it all relates. And
Yes.
it was fascinating. And I go on those tangents. Anyways, and I was like, well, how do I solve gravity? This seems like something that people struggle with. Like, so a deep dive into that. And I'm just, anyway, sorry, Joe.
Well, I mean, so this is all a part, because I think so first of all, like you said something about this ideal that you have these objectives and these goals, right? And so as soon as you start asking yourself, what am I capable of, you get scared by the answer, in my opinion, because you never thought you could even fathom what that is. But then you quickly get there. Now here's something interesting. We have a tendency as humans to measure ourselves from where we are to our ideal versus how far we've come. And so, when I hear your story and you're talking about like this measurement of the past, it feels like you always have this, well, it'll never be like, I have this whenever tough times come, or like, me and my wife are going through something, whether, it's, whatever the case is, I always have this thing I say, well, we'll never be worse off than we were yesterday. Right. That's like yesterday's the worst day we'll ever have. Because no matter what, we're getting stronger and getting better. So when you like talk about how you feel about that concept of like, you set up this ideal, you have this vision, you have these goals, and then, you're drawn to go, and it seems like you don't really take no for an answer, meaning like, you can find a way. And maybe you thought it would happen in 4 months and it happens in 10, or maybe you thought it would happen in 12 months and it happens in 2. But it doesn't seem like you let the structure or the construct of physical time get in the way of the things you do to try to get to where you're trying to go. So deconstruct that a little bit when you like are visioning out like what's the next level of accomplishment for Bert. How do you go about that?
And for me, I don't know. I guess I often think about like, at whatever time it is, like, what is it I want? And I think a lot of my childhood really plays a part in like how I've been able to see things beyond like the present. and like, and just telling myself like, hey, this is what I want. And I think for anyone who wants anything, if they want it bad enough, regardless of how much time it happens, it'll happen, because that's where they put their energy to. And you know, for me, I've been, I don't know, I've just, with time in my childhood coming up, I've just been able to see what it is I want, and just like, all right, from what life has taught me, if I keep moving towards that direction or doing anything in that direction, then that's what I'll become. And that's just generally what I do for most of the things I do. But now I've been kind of a little bit more conscious in terms of like, well, what does this mean for me? Or what do I like, how do I like bring some benefit to this world with what I'm doing? And it's not just because I enjoy helping people. I love working with people. Like for me, the people that I associate with and that I talk to, that's like, they all make me who I am. And even like some of the tougher people who I experience, you know, I just kind of defaulted like, hey man, they're just experiencing life too. They're my friends. And everybody that I was like, well, you don't have to do much to be my friend. I just enjoy having a conversation with you. So like, to that point of being able to see the present and being able to form ideals to move forward, it's just like, honestly, it's just like what life has taught me in the past, when, you know, I didn't necessarily grow up with all the means. Um, Being able to see beyond what you have and having faith that like, hey, if I keep doing something, then something will happen.
Mm.
But if I do nothing, nothing will happen.
That's so good.
So it's just kind of as simple as that, John. Is
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you know, it can't be understated how valuable it is, in my opinion, to just create momentum. If you just sit
right,
on the sidelines, either afraid to get in the game because you don't know whether it's going to work,
right,
or you, for whatever reason, you're just like, you're going to stay comfortable and always wonder if, what if.
right,
One thing I noticed today in all of industry, but in particularly in the security industry, there's way more entrepreneurs. There's way more people taking their skill set into the open market and saying, I can do this
right,
anywhere. And there's never been a better, because of low code, no code support tools, because of
right,
the marketplace that's created digitally and otherwise. There's no better time, in my opinion, to take that leap. And those who did it like yourself 10 years ago are way more ahead of the game. But it's not to say, like, the phrase I often like to use is that the best time to be planting a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time
right,
is now. It'll never grow if you don't plant the seed and start to water it. Let's take a shift a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about the practical work that you do. So one of my favorite, so the, you said this earlier around like being, I'll call it the like creative engine for the under creative. And what I mean by that is like, I I can see things in my head. I would want it to be like this, but I don't have the mechanism to often do that. But you and I used to collaborate together, and I would just like get the words out of my head, and then you'd say, okay, give me a day or two. And you
right,
go off and you do it and you create it. And this might have been just the layout we wanted for a certain presentation we were working on, or
right,
like,
right,
the cover for a report that we were going to put out, or like graphics for our newsletter, right? It was like whatever, it was anything, but it was just this creative process that we developed where I and you did it with a lot of people, but I'm, personal to me. So I want to explain it to others around how you kind of take that and then you'd iterate on it. What about this? What about this? Get that feedback, and then you'd have it and you'd say here. And so, now that seems like that's something that you're able to do for entire companies where they're like, hey, we have this
right.
brand identity that we want, or we're seeking. So tell me a little bit about like where did that come from? What was like the genesis of like basically productizing creativity as a service, and now you're able to
Oh,
deliver that. How was that? Just by happenstance? Was that just a natural evolution of what you were doing in those first years with Brevo? Like, where did that come from?
right. I mean, I think it ties back into like my overall want and desire to like be more than just one thing,
Mm.
and I understood that I have to see more than one thing to like bring about an ideal. So when someone comes to me and they want something and I'm able to turn it around, it's only because I've done my due diligence to make sure that what I'm doing is current, because I am getting older and I
Mhm.
know if I stay in my same thoughts, I can become dated quite quick. So I oftentimes look at the marketplace, several marketplaces, and because I'm working with more than just the security industry, I'm able to stick my toes, so to speak, in
Yeah.
those different in those different industries to see what's like really happening. And then I base all my ideals that I then can come up with based on a lot of different factors. A lot of time I'm thinking about like, well, how will somebody like feel when they see this? The whole emotional
Mm.
background towards like the design, and then like the analytical approach in terms of like, well, data tells me this, people move in this way, or people are triggered by this in this way. And then I try to like for myself to not just be picking and pulling from, different industries. I try to think about the brand that I'm working with and like what they're trying to convey and what they're looking like, because then you make it theirs, and that's what people want. A lot of times, from what I've noticed in the past and working with access control, specifically, a lot of times people look at the influence of Apple because, to me, I mean, I'm probably gonna get some flack, but for a long time, Apple reigned supreme in design and innovation. And, to me, probably not so much now because it's just kind of like a lot of, you know, they're dongle kings. But like seeing Apple and knowing that they do it well, a lot of people in our industry who have decided to like, all right, I'm gonna invest some money in this. We want our product to look good, just like Apple. But the
Mm.
thing is, they fail. And I remember having a conversation with one of the design leads at Latch. It's like, it's great that you all know and see and like inspire to be an Apple, but you can't lose yourself too. You want to be you.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to design and it comes to like taking people's idea, I always try to like take whatever the assignment is and I do my best to compare it to things that are working, and then I'm able to generate it. And it's just been so, because it's just been like such a long time for me working in, and it's not even just graphic design, dude. Like, I mean, not to like segue too much, but like even in college, I was just like, I'm going in as a graphic designer. I want to learn as much as I can about everything. And for a long time, I felt guilty about that because, the old saying, a jack of all trade, but a master of none. But a jack of all trade is better than a master of one. And I always just like, all right, if I do this long enough, then I can master all these things. And that's why I'm like, when clients hire me out, it's like, oh, can you do this video? Oh, can you do this photo? It's all because of over the time I've just exposed myself to so much of it that I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And because, let me see, I like to consider myself a accelerator of sorts, because there's
Mm.
a lot of red tape that you have to go through when you're working with the larger teams. And it's just like, if everybody's ideal, or if all the cooks in the kitchen doesn't align, then you spend so much time trying to get to one thing when you could have came up with 10 or 20 different iterations and tested them to see if it
Mm-hmm.
works. That's one of the things that I really love about like Leo Des and how we over the last few years have worked really well. Because for me, I've always been content, I could generate it. And for him, he's been more so on the verbal side of things and talking about it, his expertise. And like, so because he comes up with his ideas, he's like, oh, let's push it, push it, push it, push it, see if it works. And I'm like,
Yeah.
great, see if it works, see if it works, see if it works.
Yeah.
Boom. And it's just being able to like test these different things, opposed to spending a whole year trying to come up with one thing and then it possibly being a flop. You have the opportunity to come up with more. So I'm gonna stop right there, but that's just like kind of what I do to like
And
to
it
work on
comes
those
to a
different
point, Lee, now where after working with you and Lee and kind of buying into that process that then has been indoctrinated into me, it really helps I work at a startup, and not being afraid to, like, one, not fall in love with previously held norms,
Right.
to be comfortable with iterating, to look outside. Like our two marketing people, that are fantastic, Sarah Schoenfeld and Jenna, Hardy. Like they've kind of come in and out of the industry a little bit, right? So it reminds me kind of a little bit of like Hillary, right? Where it's like they understand it enough, but understand that you need to bring in influences from outside, and
Right.
do things differently. Like for instance, we did this whole, and use popular culture. So we did this whole, like, not even a campaign, like an idea in a Slack channel around, hey, let's do, everyone's Spotify raps were coming up. So they
Right.
said, real
Right.
quickly, let's do a Spotify rap, around like GSOC things that are like bad, right? Like so, and then,
Right.
like,
Right.
idea, iterate, put it out, go. And
Right.
so, like, and not being afraid, it's like all it is a LinkedIn post. It shouldn't take
Right.
an act of your board of directors to approve for you to put something out on LinkedIn, right? So you just do it. You just come with ideas, you just go. um and that's what was so fun about what we did together was, it reminds me of, like, if you've ever, this could be a little controversial, but if you've ever watched like South Park, there's
Right.
a
Right.
there's a awesome, so people don't, maybe, like, South Park has been around since like the early 90s, and it
Right.
still has the staying power and the impact, and because what they do is they have a 5-day creative process. They whiteboard. So there's this great, like, I'm sure you can find it if you look it up. There's a great episode they did on like the creation, and actually, funny enough, the I'll call it like mini documentary that they did was about the iPhone. It was they were making fun of Apple, and what really happens, what they can do to you if you don't read the terms and conditions and you acknowledge it, and they turn people into a
Right.
human centipede. Like, it was really hilarious, and they had no idea when they sat down. I think the episodes used to go live on Thursday. They sat down on like a Sunday and Monday, and we're like, what are we going to do? And like, what's funny now, right? So they just iterate, and they go through, and they're whiteboarding, and they design, and they do it all, and then they, by Thursday, they had their episode. But like, that's what having, I think, like, creative flexibility and
Right.
getting the right people in the room to help you, allow you to accomplish, right? And like, that what was cool when we were working together, and then I seeing it last year at ISC West, like, the I'll call it, AI branding wall that you put together,
All
where
right.
you created designs for all the sponsors of the lounge based on just content, like your vision of stuff you saw from their website and kind of branding stuff, and you put it in, and, like, you know totally out of, like, the realm of what any of them, I don't give a shit what they say,
Right.
none of them would have been like, do that for me, or create, like, I think it was like Liftmaster was like this, like, Viking looking character standing in front of like this huge, like, cavernous gate, monolithic wall. And it's like, that is awesome, right? So it's like, like, people are so blown away,
Right.
because it's just
But
like,
that's
like I said, let Bert be Bert. Like, tell me what you want, let me go do
right.
it, and then maybe it won't be for everybody, but if it isn't for anybody, then it isn't for you anyway.
Right.
So, like, don't worry about it.
Right. But that's a good example of like taking something that we are hearing about. I mean, probably even more, well, not probably, but even more so now when it comes to AI. Like, we know the tools exist. We know that there are tools out there that can create whatever it is that you envision. Being able to utilize that, being able to like capture some of these new ways of processing things, that's just something that like I think everybody should be doing because
Mm.
it's here. It's not going anywhere. So why don't you like try some different things from what from your norm so you can see how it works and be more relatable to what's happening in the world around us. Working in access control, and we're working in the security industry, just being able to like, dude, I don't know, just being able to do something different. And just like, when I talk to a lot of different companies, it's like, hey, why don't you try something new? Like, you've all been doing this for forever now, same suit and tie deal, same stock art, pictures and videos, just like try something else, And like, I don't know, not to go back to Brevo, but I remember when I had some downtime in Brevo, and I was like, you know what? Why don't I just start a series with some satire or something like that? And Ronald Esgart was born, a freaking puppet. You know, I'm sure he's hanging around here somewhere. But the puppet and just like being able to like, okay, this was like honestly, it was a joke for me because I was like, you know, it's not much content that's like entertaining or fun at the time back in 2014, 2015. So I was like, well, how can I get something security related and make it funny? And it was just this whole thing. And then next thing you know, Ronald Esgard is being flown out to Miami to welcome an onboarding team for lunch. But it's just a simple idea of like trying something new, breaking away from the norms, breaking out of these like Canva templates that you have someone on your team making because you're trying to generate content, but everyone is using it. And if you know everyone is using it, then everyone's stuff is looking the same. A lot of times I run into a lot of companies who want to cut corners and want things cheap and don't really understand the value of having good design or having understanding the value of like a different approach to creative, then they just fall back in the same place that they've always been. And I was just like, you see these bigger companies redesigning, rebranding. There's a reason why they do it. And a lot of times, I mean, Ivy League has a topo sheet with all these logos. Some logos are beautiful. We can tell right away who has gotten it. But then there are other companies. I mean, you can't even, I'm just like, bro, your stuff is pixelated, your stuff is bad. And I'll try not to say anything in a bad way, but like, why haven't you rebranded to make yourself on that same level as everyone else? Why are you pinky toed into holding the same look forever? And you can't tell them because it all goes back to the idea of understanding the value in change. Change, it's impossible to get away from change every day. Like you said, John, every day is a new day, and we're growing. We're much better than we were yesterday because we know a lot more because it's a new day now. And I'm just like, I try to press it hard to anyone that I work with in this industry in particular, because it's not that many players out there who are actually like adapting and adjusting and changing. It's the same look that they've had since they've started out of their garages. And that was like the great idea that they came up with, like, oh yeah, let's keep it. I want to keep it this way because this is my legacy. But I'm just like, even bigger companies need to change, And I don't know. That's just my spiel for that. That's just my spiel. So just like stay as creative as you can be, but like embrace it. Learn and see the value in that.
Yeah, well put, man. Well put. Well, as we wrap things to a close here, I want to give people the opportunity where they can find you. One, you're a super fantastic follow on all social media platforms. If you want to see Bert renovate his home, find him on both TikTok and Instagram. It's I'll if you're open to it, I'll post your handles in the show notes because
yeah, that's no
it's going to
problem.
be
It's
an
totally
adventure.
fine.
But and then professionally, where can people find you? Your website, LinkedIn, if people want to work with you and get their creative juices going.
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn for the most part. My website is up. I have a very, very small body of my work on there, due to legal reasons. I can't post everything, but a very small body of my work. And I just want to say, a lot of times people don't know like what or who We the Dreamer is. Like, I made that company or started that business name based off of like the fear that I had in taking the first leap and understanding that like, hey, it's a dream that I have. It's something that I want to do and I want to move forward. So when I created it, I wanted to be more so of an inspiration or a symbol of hope to do things that you want to do, opposed to like, hey, here's my business logo. Here's what design is what I do. People is who I love. And I like believe that anybody can chase that. So you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I'm best reached by email. John, you can drop it in the script. Just real quick, working with Leo Des, he got a lot of fantastic things he's pushing out. you can find me with him a lot of times, and connect with him or whatever. But yeah, social media, yeah. Thanks,
Awesome.
but thanks, John, for having me on. I really appreciate it. I hope I'm not the. I don't think I'm the first Black guy, but if I am, thank you.
I'll have to check. You may be. You may be groundbreaking. Breaking. No, Joe Henry was on. He's got that. My partner Joe, who me and Joe are from Maryland. You can't see my background's blurred out, but if I kind of hold my hand, you can see the Maryland flag right there and all my wonderful
Right.
Maryland. So you warm my heart when you say that you've fallen in love with my home state and that you'll be there forever. It's a fantastic place, and you even more so you live now, the house that you bought that you're building, it is like right in the area that I grew up in, and like where my
Right.
grandparents owned rental properties that I used to DIY when I was a kid. My grandpa would pull me around as like 12, 13, 14. Hey, come help me recarpet the rental property, get it ready for the new for the new tenants that
Right.
they're bringing in. So it's a great area, and I love to see great people moving into those spots in Maryland, and
Right.
continue to develop that community and culture. So
Right.
um Bert, love you, man. I'm so happy we were able to have this conversation and share your
Love you
story
too,
with
John.
others. Thank you for taking the time, and I appreciate just like, and there's so much we might have to there's other conversations to have, because there's a lot of stuff we didn't even get a chance to go into. So definitely want to have you back on to talk a little bit more about, and kind of
Oh, for
the
sure.
just the continued, I think there's so much power in just again, like your story on just taking a bet on yourself, believing in yourself, and believing in yourself with an end to impact others, and kind of driving your mission towards a virtuous outcome versus any other way. I think it's a great way to help move things forward and continue for just to create massive impacts. So I want to recognize you for that, and all the great work you've done. So appreciate it, man.
All right,
Have
I
a happy,
appreciate
this
it,
will
John. Oh,
drop.
John.
Yes.
Oh, one last thing. Love you, man.
Love you, man. You have a fantastic holiday. This will be going out right before Christmas and the holiday season. So enjoy it. Have a good time. Safe travels,
All
and
right.
we'll talk again soon. Let's go do great things.
You too. Bye.